Okay, so this deep dive, you really sent us down a rabbit hole this time, Spider-Man, Homecoming.
Yeah.
Not just about who's wearing the mask,
Right.
but like all the people behind the scenes making this whole superhero world come to life on screen.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking at this huge cast and crew list you sent us from IMDb.
It's massive.
And it is just mind-boggling how many people
People.
are involved in a movie like this. And today, we're going to really just try and understand that, the sheer scale of it.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're going to focus on the people who really conjure up that movie magic. The special and visual effects departments.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of that scale, I mean, just scrolling through the full cast and crew list on IMDb for Spider-Man, Homecoming, it's like it never ends.
It's true.
It's hundreds of names. And it makes you realize just how many individual contributions go into making a major movie.
Yeah, and that list includes everybody from the actors to the caterers.
Yeah.
But we're going to really focus in on the art department, the special effects people, and then that huge army of visual effects artists.
Right.
And those are the folks that are really responsible for crafting all those fantastical elements that we think of with a superhero film.
Right. So let's start off just by thinking about the size of this crew. I mean, when you look at all the credits, there's so many different roles listed.
Right.
And what's interesting is you have all these credited names, but then there's also numerous uncredited additions. So there's even more people behind the scenes that aren't even listed.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's really fascinating. That list is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the number of people who probably played a role. But it really speaks to the fact that filmmaking is such a massive team effort.
Yeah.
And of course, leading that whole team right at the top of those credits, we see Jon Watts as the directed by, the person who had the overarching vision for this film.
And then you look at the writing credits and it's like, woo.
It's a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, it's like a creative brain trust in there. We've got Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daley, Jon Watts himself, Christopher Ford, Chris McKenna, Eric Summers, all credited with the screenplay. And Goldstein and Daley also get a story credit.
That's right.
So it just shows that even coming up with the narrative is a collaborative process.
Absolutely. And what's significant there also is the fact that they have Stan Lee and Steve Ditko credited for creating the character of Spider-Man.
Right.
And even further back, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby get a credit for Captain America because he shows up in Homecoming.
Right, a little cameo.
And this really reminds us that these movies, these cinematic universes, really are built on decades and decades of storytelling from those comic books.
Right. Now, before we get too far into the effects themselves, let's just mention the art department. I mean, I know our focus is on the visual magic, but the actual real world of the film has to be constructed, right?
Absolutely.
And just glancing at those art department credits gives you a sense of the different roles involved. Yeah. For instance, Thibaut Tassaram is listed as a scenic foreman, uncredited, and John Trafton is a laborer, also uncredited.
Right.
So even building the sets
Absolutely.
requires a wide range of skills and labor.
Yeah, the art department, they're really responsible for giving that initial visual foundation for the film.
Right.
It's really the environments where the action takes place, and in many cases, it's the stage for what those special and visual effects teams are going to build upon. Yeah. They're really giving you the look and feel of the space.
Okay. Now let's get to some of the really exciting stuff. The special effects. So the number of individuals in the special effects bisection is really something. Leading the charge, we've got Daniel Surdick, credited as the special effects supervisor. He's the guy who makes the practical effects happen on set.
Right. And under his guidance, there's really an interesting mix of specialized roles and even companies that focus on different aspects of those effects. So, for example, we have a whole group: Peter Roney, Joshua Balster, Craig T. Curry, Samantha Curry, Becky Azadi, Gary Pisano, Jim Shafe, Shane Stover, and Don Wirtz. And they're all listed as special effects. SCPS Unlimited.
Right.
So it sounds like this is a company that came in and probably provided a variety of on-set effects.
So they brought in different teams with different, very specific skills. Like we also see Jeff L. Diast, Roderick Kachatourian, Lindsay McGowan, David Merritt, J. Allen Scott, and Christopher Swift, all under special effects, legacy effects. And legacy effects has a great reputation for their creature work, their practical effects.
Right.
So you can just imagine the kind of detailed, tangible things they might have contributed to a superhero movie like this.
Precisely. And that specialization just keeps on going. So we've got Brian Dooley, Jose Fernandez, Pete Kelly, Taishira Kia, and Timothy Leach. And they're all credited with special effects. Ironhead Studio. And Ironhead Studio, they're very well known for their incredibly detailed costume work,
Right.
especially on superhero films. So they may have been involved in crafting maybe some of the more intricate parts of Spider-Man's suit or even elements of the Vulture's wings.
Okay, then you have these people, the foreman.
Yeah.
Mark Banich and Stephen Carlton Fick are both listed as special effects foremen.
Yeah.
So they're the crucial link between the supervisor and all the technicians who are executing these effects.
Right. And speaking of technicians, there's a huge list. Michael Bertseni, David Boucher, Brian Barnhart, Tony Santanze, Matt Dingle, Keith Haynes, Chad Holmes, Todd Jensen, Emery Manley, Nathan Nanny, Darren O'Neill, Cole Finn, Katie Riggs, Tim Walkie, Sean Windish, Lionel Zapian, and Thomas Sell, all credited as special effects technician or similar.
Right.
That really gives you a sense of how many people you need on a day-to-day basis on set to actually pull off these planned effects.
Right. And then we see James Denton listed as a modeler gang boss, which sounds really cool. But that makes you think about, okay, what kind of models were they creating? Miniatures for certain shots, or maybe even as reference points for the visual effects artists who would later be creating digital versions.
Right.
And then it's interesting to see Ethan Carney and Peter Carney listed as design technician, as well as Bailey Eller, design technician. So that suggests a team involved in the initial
Absolutely. The prototyping stage.
figuring out how these effects would actually work.
Absolutely.
And then we can't forget Mitch Tolles, credited with pyrotechnic effects, uncredited.
Oh, of course. The explosions.
All the explosions, all those controlled explosions that add
such-
so much impact.
Right. And that's another one of those things that it's easy to forget how many people are involved in even just that one aspect of the filmmaking process.
Right. And then you have all these uncredited roles. It continues to illustrate just the diversity of skills needed, right? So we see special effects technician, again, a lot of people in that role, scenic artist, making the sets look worn or damaged for effect, model shop supervisor, a fabricator. They'd build physical props or set pieces. Someone specializing in special effects scenic work, especially costume, a puppeteer even, perhaps to manipulate certain practical effects. Special effects assistant.
Right.
And a special effects paint lead. It's like a whole ecosystem of different specialized crafts working together.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a whole separate world behind the scenes. It makes you think about, how much goes into just creating these illusions.
Right. And what's really fascinating is this idea that different companies specialize in very specific areas of special effects. We had SCPS Unlimited, Legacy Effects, Ironhead Studio. Each of these companies brought a unique talent to the production.
Absolutely. They probably handled different types of practical effects.
Right.
Based on their expertise.
Right. Okay. So if the special effects crew sounds pretty substantial, get ready.
Okay.
Because the visual effects bisection is absolutely massive.
That's the big one.
And this really speaks to how much modern movies rely on computer-generated imagery, CGI,
right,
to create these unbelievable moments.
Absolutely. The volume of names in that visual effects section, it really highlights how essential it is to a movie like this, Spider-Man: Homecoming.
So we see Vincent Sorelli from Luma Pictures listed as a senior visual effects supervisor, and Theodore Bialik from Sony Pictures Imageworks in a similar role. So these are the key figures who are overseeing the entire digital effects process.
Right. And they often have to manage large teams across multiple studios.
Right. And beneath them is this whole hierarchy of artists, technicians, managers with incredible specialized skills.
It's really incredible.
So, for example, let's just take the modeling texture artists.
Yeah.
Right? We've got Damien Abdul from Digital Domain, Francisco Alvarez, also from Digital Domain, Mauricio Amesco Aregui from Method Studios, Mario Anger, also from Method Studios, Yinghao Chai from Luma Pictures, James Chan from Sony Pictures Imageworks, and the list goes on and on. Dozens of individuals from these major visual effects companies. Yeah. And their job is to sculpt, essentially.
It's digital sculpting.
Yeah, and paint these digital 3D models. And these are models of the characters, vehicles, environments to make them look as realistic as possible.
Right. And a great example of that would be creating Spider-Man's suit.
Yes.
so that it moves realistically, it reacts to light properly, and it looks like an actual physical suit. I mean, that would be a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
And you can see just how much detail goes into it when you see the number of modelers and texture artists.
Right.
And they're from places like Digital Domain and Method Studios.
Right.
They were probably focusing on different aspects of it, like the fabric and the web shooters, and even just how the suit would wear. Right.
So it's really incredible.
And what's also fascinating is, again, it's not just the number of these artists, but the fact they're working for all these different visual effects companies. Digital Domain, Method Studios, Luma Pictures, Sony Pictures, ImageWorks, and so on.
And they probably took on different sequences or elements of the film.
Right.
Based on their strength.
Right. Then you have the compositing artists. Now, this is where it all comes together. The live action footage, the CGI, any practical effects, it's blended seamlessly into the final shot. And again, it's a huge list.
Oh, yeah.
Borja Hernandez-Abellan from Sony Pictures ImageWorks, Kari Anthony from Digital Domain, Eduardo Anton, Carl Albaber from Method Studios, Adam Bacon from Digital Domain, and hundreds more, including many who aren't even credited.
Right.
It's amazing.
And compositing is crucial because it's really like that last stage.
Right.
They're like digital painters.
Right.
Who take all those layers of an image and blend them together so it looks like one cohesive shot.
And the sheer number of compositors really speaks to how complex the process was and how many shots needed that work.
And then we can't forget the effect artist animators. These are the ones responsible for all the dynamic movement, explosions, energy blasts,
and of course,
and Spider-Man.
Spider-Man swinging through the city.
Yeah, and all his acrobatic moves. So we've got Rachel Ajork from Luma Pictures, Tosna Kinwaye from Digital Domain, Tom Allen, also from Luma Pictures, Sergei Bolasov from Sony Pictures ImageWorks, Stephen Blakey from Digital Domain, and so many others.
And it's important to remember with the animation and visual effects, it's not just about making things move.
Right.
It's about making them move realistically. So all the digital elements have to obey the laws of physics. They have to look believable.
Yeah.
And the effects artists and animators are crucial in making all that happen.
And then we have lighting rendering artists.
Yeah.
Now, their job is to make sure that the digital elements are integrated into the live-action footage by carefully controlling the light and shadows.
Yeah.
So we have Carol Altakov from Trickster, Alfredo R. Barcia from Sony Pictures ImageWorks, Blandine Chantour from Digital Domain, Matthew Choi, also from Digital Domain, and a whole huge team dedicated to ensuring that visual consistency across all the effect shots.
And lighting and rendering is one of those things, it's often overlooked, but it's absolutely essential for creating realism.
Yeah.
Because even if you have a digital model that's incredibly detailed, if the lighting is off, it's going to look artificial. So these artists, they're meticulously crafting how the light interacts with those surfaces to match the real-world lighting.
Right, right. We also have match move tracking artists, and they have this incredibly important task of tracking the movement of the camera and objects in the live action footage. So think about it like this, you have a live action shot of Spider-Man swinging down the street.
Okay.
Right. The match move artists are mapping out the camera's movement in 3D space so that the CGI Spider-Man can be locked into that shot.
Right.
And so that his movements feel natural.
Absolutely.
And grounded in that real environment. So we have Nicole Ashford from Allura, Ando Avila from Trickster, Danny Banda also from Allura, and many more, ensuring that those digital and practical worlds are aligned.
Yeah, and match move and tracking, they're really kind of the unsung heroes of visual effects, because without their work, the digital elements would just kind of be floating around.
Yeah, they wouldn't be attached.
Then it would just look totally fake.
Right, right. And let's not forget the rigging artists. They're the ones who create the digital skeletons and control systems that allow the animators to move and pose the CGI characters and objects. So Dominic Burbaum from Trickster, Nevin Pinto from Digital Domain, Joseph Spadaro, also from Digital Domain, and others in this department.
Yeah.
They're providing the essential foundation for that animation. It's like building the puppet before the puppeteer can bring it to life.
Right. A good rig is really essential because it allows for that full range of motion, and it allows for those digital characters to give really expressive performances.
Right. Right. Then you have the Pipeline TD's engineers.
Yeah.
And these are the technical wizards who build and maintain the software and workflows that allow all these visual effects departments to work together smoothly.
Okay.
So in a huge project like this, with hundreds of artists using different software, sharing tons of files, they're kind of like the IT department.
Oh,
or the whole visual effects process.
Absolutely.
Building these digital highways so that everybody can collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
We've got Sam Bourne from Luma Pictures, Chris Bone from Allura, Stefan Contreras from Sony Pictures ImageWorks, and a big team ensuring that everything is running smoothly.
Yeah, the pipeline team, they're really the backbone of any big visual effects operation.
Right.
They're the ones who solve the problems and keep things running smoothly.
Yeah. Now, even before the visual effects production starts, you have the previs artists, short for pre-visualization. So Hector Aguirre from the third floor, Emina Koshali, also from the third floor, Richard Almodovar, also from the third floor, and dozens of others.
Right.
They help plan out the action sequences and camera movements in a very rough animated form.
Right.
So this early planning can save a lot of time and money
Absolutely.
during the actual filming process.
Right. It's like a blueprint for the action.
Yeah.
It lets everybody see what's going on. They can make adjustments before they even get to the set.
Right. And to create those stunning, vast digital environments, you have the digital map painters. So Davide Bonello from Method Studios, Anita Bergsok from Trickster, Andrew Clark from Luma Pictures, and others. They essentially craft these photorealistic backgrounds that extend the real sets or even create entirely virtual landscapes. Yeah. And they do it all digitally.
It's amazing. They're like digital magicians, creating these vast landscapes and cityscapes, things that would be impossible or just way too expensive to build for real.
And then, to bring the digital characters to life, to make them move in believable ways, you have character effects artist supervisors. And think about the subtle movements of Spider-Man's suit as he's swinging through the air, the way it bunches and stretches. That level of detail, making the digital character feel real, is often the work of dedicated character effects artists. Okba Amidziana Hassani at Digital Domain, Matt Brown, also from Digital Domain, Juan Carlos Delgado Gonzalez, also from Digital Domain, and many others.
Yeah, and they really focus on those tiny details, you know?
Yeah.
How a character moves, how their clothes flow.
Right.
And it adds so much to the realism.
Yeah. And then kind of guiding the virtual camera through these digital environments, you have the layout artists, Gerald Cabal from Method Studios, Daniela Campos, a little from Sony Pictures ImageWorks, Cece Chen from Method Studios, and others. They're determining the framing and composition of the visual effects shots. So it's kind of like setting up a shot with real cameras, except they're doing it digitally.
Exactly. They're digital cinematographers.
Yeah. And then for Spider-Man Homecoming, they also created a 3D version of the film. So that was a whole other team. Stereo 3D artists.
Yeah.
And we see all these roles across different companies, Stereo D, Legend 3D, South Bay, Allura, including stereo supervisors, producers, compositors, editors, depth artists, all dedicated to creating that immersive 3D experience.
Yeah, and that 3D conversion is a really complex process.
Right.
They have to adjust the depth in each shot and make it work for the audience.
Right. So what really jumps out at you when you look at all these different roles and departments is how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
You know, the special effects often providing a physical starting point that the visual effects build upon.
Absolutely.
It's a back and forth throughout the filmmaking process.
Right, and it's all about communication and coordination.
Right. For instance, you might have a practical explosion on set done by the special effects team.
Right.
And then that could be used as reference.
Oh, okay.
By the digital artists at a company like Luma Pictures.
Got it.
To create the fiery aftermath.
Right, so they're building off what was done practically. Yeah. That's really cool. And that ensures a sense of realism.
Yeah.
And that it all flows together.
And for you, someone who wants to learn quickly but thoroughly, you know, this deep dive into the credits of Spider-Man Homecoming.
Right.
It shows the immense amount of work that goes into making a modern movie like this.
Yeah.
And what you see on screen is truly the result of hundreds of people.
Hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And they all have their own unique skills.
Right.
And it's amazing to see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
To create that final cinematic experience.
Okay, so to sum up our deep dive today, the making of Spider-Man. Homecoming was a huge undertaking. So many people involved. The contributions of all the special effects and visual effects artists were especially important. And it shows how complex movie making is today.
I think it's remarkable. It's a real testament to what modern filmmaking can achieve. You know, you have those practical explosions, and then you have those fully digital environments and characters, and it's just this massive coordinated effort by all these talented people.
Yeah, here's something for you to think about. When you consider how many people were involved in just the effects for this one movie,
Yeah.
what does that tell us about the scale of the entertainment industry as a whole? And how all these collaborative processes, all this specialization might evolve in the future as new technologies emerge?
That's a great question. It's something to really think about, you know? How will filmmaking adapt as technology changes?
Something to ponder, for sure. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Absolutely. This was fun.
I'm glad.
Always interesting to peek behind the curtain.